I was going to share a quote from one of my favourite films, Bruce Almighty, because
Yeah.
Dustin was talking about things in life and the priorities and the what makes you happy. And I was like, it was where the God and Bruce are in the warehouse and they're chatting, and the first time they meet, and he goes, "You always were funny, Bruce, just like your father. He didn't mind rolling up his sleeves either, son. Pulling people underestimate the benefit of good old manual labour. There's freedom in it. Some of the happiest people in the world go home smelling to the high heaven at the end of the day."
That's true.
Yeah, I always like that quote in that movie.
That's a good quote.
Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and the hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, American retro design expert, Dustin Lee, and the ever-talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glantz. Today we look at if it's ever too late to get into design. We tackle 2 listener questions around this topic and give our best tips for how to break into the creative industry at any age. Without further ado, let's get into the show. So this week, the big discussion to be had is it ever too late to be a designer?
What? Can I ask why you always say it in a cheesy way?
Because, Ian, I'm self-conscious and masking that through a poor attempt at
I
humor.
like that.
I actually never noticed, Tom, just so you know, I never thought it sounded cheesy.
Thanks, buddy. At least you... So, Ian, we were saying right before this episode that you're never mean about other people.
Oh, that's true.
And you zinged me within 10 seconds. I tell you what, why don't you do the intro next time? And I'm going to go off and have a hissy fit.
Like, I can do the intro for you now if you want.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Take it away.
Hit it.
He's gonna nail it as well, isn't he?
Yeah.
Let's keep this all in.
Yeah, take it away, buddy.
I'm 39 now. I started lettering when I was 34, and I thought that was too late, but it wasn't. But we're going to, in this show, we're going to be discussing: is it too late to be a designer? So that's the question we're going to be looking at. So,
damn it, that
I like
was pretty good.
Wait,
Yeah.
I feel like we should all try now. Let's see. Let me try this.
yeah.
Is it ever too late to be a designer? Yes, it is. Now,
See you next week.
Yeah, if you're on your deathbed picking up a tablet, maybe, but otherwise, Lisa, do you want to give it a go?
Right. How does it go? Is it ever too late to be a designer? The answer is no, definitely not. I only started illustrating yesterday. No. I'm a self-taught illustrator, so if I can do it, anyone can. How about that?
Ooh, I like that, yeah. Life affirming. Okay, so guys, I'm out of a job.
No.
in all honesty, I think you did that the best by far, Tom.
No, you're good at
Charlie.
keeping us under control as well.
Yeah, we just
And
total
I have my
psychos.
work cut out for me sometimes, you pesky kids.
Yep.
Okay, so this is actually coming from a couple of listener questions, this topic. So I believe Dustin and Lisa,
Yep.
followers of you guys, posed them. Dustin, do you want to take it away with yours first and credit the appropriate person?
Sure. So I got a message on Instagram from a nice woman named, forgive me if I butcher this, Naomi G. G-E-E. And her handle is Patterned Love on Instagram. And she said, so I found the recent Honest Designer show pretty interesting from a different angle. I'm turning 30 this year and just coming back to design after not officially working as a designer for 7 years. I'd be interested to hear this topic from your angle of starting over as an adult who graduated years ago and doesn't have the benefit of being fresh out of college, edge to hire them into entry-level roles.
Cool. And Lisa, yours was a little bit different.
A little
kind of,
different.
I think it's still applicable to this topic.
Yeah, it's from Sam Cunningham. And she writes, she says, I've been into crafting and creating for years, and cutting a long story short, have only just started up my business To put it bluntly, I suck at drawing, but love creating. So I use Design Cuts products to help bring my ideas to life, within the licensing terms, of course. And she says, I do spend my time creating and nurturing products to bring to my customers, but I'm also not a designer. Sometimes I feel a bit of a fraud, but I wonder what your take was on this.
Cool. And to clarify, is Sam male or female, or do we not know?
We don't know, but I think it's a female. Sorry, Sam. I'm just making an assumption. It's a woman. Her shop, or his shop, is called Knick Knack Crafts. So,
on Instagram. Cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at Facebook.
Yeah. Apologies, Sam, if you've just been
I'm so
publicly
sorry, Sam.
emasculated in front of thousands of listeners.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, first of all, thank you for the questions, Naomi and Sam. I think Naomi, first of all, she's turning 30, and Ian started when he was 34. So that is a very quick answer of yes, it is possible. Obviously, we go more in depth than that. Yeah. With Sam, I think it, again, is relevant because it's that imposter syndrome. And I think a lot of people get that. You get it even if you've got, tons of experience, but I think people perhaps get it less if they've been doing it their whole life. And I've heard from a few people as well where they're entering into the design scene without all the experience, and they feel like a complete imposter and racked with self-doubt, etc. So we thought that Naomi and Sam's questions would kind of marry well together for this episode. What are our thoughts around this? I mean, I off the bat, I'm like, yes, it's absolutely doable, but with the caveat of it's probably going to be more scary and difficult than if you had 10 years behind you, right?
Oh, definitely.
I would add two things to this. So obviously you have first of all, you have the disadvantage of not being young. There's all sorts of advantages to that. You don't have kids. You have more time to learn. You can go to school for it, blah, blah, blah. But there's two really huge advantages of doing it older. One, when they do studies on people that are entrepreneurs, and I feel like starting as a designer is very much like a self-initiated thing that takes a lot of that. They find that older people, like people that are in their 30s and 40s, tend to have a much higher success rate than people in their 20s. So I think your chances of succeeding at design are higher when you're a bit older. So you have to play to those strengths. And I guess my second point isn't really a point as much as a quick, inspiring story I heard. And that is that Samuel L. Jackson didn't start acting until he was 46 years old. I mean, think about that. If there's any industry where you feel like you should start young, it's either rock and roll music or acting. And the fact that Samuel L. Jackson decided that he would start being movies at 46 and became a total badass at being at movies starting at 46, it just goes to show, like, you can do it. And I'm sure there's plenty of exceptions to that rule, but that one's inspiring to me.
Yeah, that's very, very cool.
And there's been stories of like endurance runners who've started, when they're 45 as well. And, I suppose age only is a number in certain cases, where it doesn't really, obviously the older get, the body isn't as but that
capable.
As capable, but there's a lot of exemptions to those rules. And I think especially as we living longer, especially in the areas where we live, that I think, like, even at my age, I'm nearly hitting 40, I've still got like another 40 or 50 years left, which is I'm not even halfway through my life. And I think about all the time I've been doing design, which is only about, it's about like 18 years. And so, even if I started today, I'd only be 58 by the time I got that experience, back again. So I think it's I think, I think
it's the same as what you were saying, Ian. I mean, I actually only started as you guys know, my illustration career when I was 40. I think I turned 40 or 41. So, I mean, if I can do, it was a huge shift for me. I never illustrated hardly ever did illustration work for a client. It was always within my design work. So my whole life has changed. I don't do any design work anymore. I just illustrate full time. And just to circle back to Sam's feelings, is that whole thing of like, am I good enough? I mean, obviously I went through all of that because I was mostly self-taught. At school I did a bit of I did art, but at school, like, it's kind of limiting. I never did art after that. I never did any illustration courses, and I never did any of that. So I spent a huge amount of time on the internet learning and finding out stuff and figuring stuff out. And because that's the thing, I mean, even if you don't have the money to go back to school when you're like in your 30s or 40s, I mean, there's so much stuff out there these days for free. And even, if you willing to pay a little bit on the internet, you could learn just about anything, so I don't think it's ever too late. I think the question is more about how badly you want it, because if you want it bad enough, I think you can figure it out no matter what. Age is not going to stop you. I mean, obviously, if you want to become an Olympic athlete and you're 50, that might be an issue. But but that's a physical thing.
Right.
But in terms of a mental or a skill driven thing, you could learn anything at any age.
I look at myself. I went to an art school, but I pretty much gave that up and was working in banking until I was around 27, and I was kind of dabbling in design. And that sounds like, for instance, what Naomi is doing right now. And I was able to make an entire career out of this. And I am also not a great drawer. I'm getting better now that I started that daily challenge. Thank the Lord. I was encouraged by you guys to do that. But you can look at even Ian, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, Ian, but Ian started by doing like very, I think, common work that lots of us do, doing websites and brochures and things like that. And I remember when he started doing lettering, he was putting it on the packs. And in the beginning, it was like not exceptional. It was a guy trying to do it. And within maybe 2 years, it was amazing. And in a year, it was better than most. In 2 years, it was like world class. So it only takes a few years, I think, of dedicated work to become exceptional at a skill if you really love doing it.
That's so right about the dedicated work, though, because I remember at school, I've played guitar now for quite a few years, but me playing guitar is me forgetting to pick up the guitar and playing the same old songs every few months kind of thing. And it was a little bit more intensive when I started out, but there was a guy at school who basically picked up a guitar and practiced for like 8-9 hours a day after school. Wow. Every day. And it was like scales and arpeggios and
He's
like
gonna
until
get
his
good.
fingers blistered. And he got really good, funny enough. And I think when you look at the average person's capacity for learning, they probably don't push it that hard. But if this is like a passion burning inside of you and you really want it, then go after it. And that focused learning, like you said, Dustin, I think when you're a bit older, you've got your head level on your shoulders a bit more, and so you're going to be more focused and deliberate. I might have been technically doing like some form of entrepreneurship since I was 12, and now I'm 30. But for those 18 years, the majority of those have been complete trial and error, running around like a headless chicken, making mistakes, figuring it out. And that's all part of the journey. But really, I feel like I could take the lessons I've learned in entrepreneurship and also in my kind of past career in design and condense them down to like 10% of the time.
Totally.
Because there was so much fluff and so much wastage. And
It's
like
true.
if you're really focused, and a lot of it is like actively taking classes, like you mentioned, Lisa, and there becomes this kind of logical progression, right? So it's not just trying stuff and floating around, which can be fine too, but when you're literally working through a program and then onto the next skill and next skill, before you know it, you've got a very rapidly expanding arsenal of techniques at your disposal. Stuff like daily challenges, right? You look at the people that have started those on the back of the show, and they might have posted once every 2 months before. Right. So now in 1 month, they're posting more than they would have in 2 years, kind of thing.
I mean, I've been sketching and not posting it for quite a while now, and I feel like, and I just posted for the first time in forever the other day, but I can see, I'm like, okay, in a year, I could probably be very close to as good as some of my favorite people. Because I can start to see, I'm starting to be able to draw the hands. I'm starting to be able to get the proportions right. I'm starting to have a catalog in my head of ways to assemble things together.
Yep.
And just as inspiring is Ian had kids and a wife and a mortgage, assuming he had a mortgage, when he started. So he didn't have 12 hours a day to do this, and he became world class. So even if that's a challenge, it's entirely possible.
The thing is, it's just about, because none of us can get any extra time. It's what we dedicate our time to. So, the whole, watching Netflix or practicing calligraphy, which was, the Netflix wasn't really there, but it was either watching TV or Netflix, Downton Abbey. Yeah. And so luckily, I didn't really have any interest in Downton Abbey, and that's what because it's like silly things like that. It's not.
Can you believe how much your life changed because of your lack of love of
sliding
Downton Abbey?
You could be fronting up the Downton Abbey fan cast right now, just going. It's super in depth.
I want to go into some how jobs changed or my career changed through just small little things. Okay, so. Obviously, I mentioned a lot about how I got into calligraphy, which was, two things, Downton Abbey and Calligraphy's Guide to Dummies.
So it sounds like that's something everyone should now replicate.
But
Step one, Downton Abbey.
And it wasn't like, I got taught by the master of calligraphy. I literally got the most basic book I could and sat down and then I did, the 100-day challenge. It was, 6 months I did every day. And so that was one area. Another area was when I went from just doing print-based design to doing websites and stuff like that. I was thinking I really need to learn CSS, which is the style sheets that give websites the look they give. And so all I did was get another book and went through this book. And I was at my design job, and I said, I learned how to do this. And I did one website for them, just for the actual company itself, not that they had jobs doing it. And the company who, it was like a templated website, a bit like Squarespace and Wix, but it was ages ago. And I did the design via these style sheets. And the company who actually owned the template, as in the base platform, got in contact and said, could you work for us? And that was one of the reasons why I was able to go sort of full-time freelance, because that company gave me regular work designing sites for all their clients.
That's awesome.
And so it was like, it's nothing like massive. It's all through little bits of learning that has progressed, push my career onto something else. And I suppose why I'm a big fan of people say, I can't afford to get say, for instance, Skillshare, or Udemy. We're not sponsored by any of these, but this is just Lisa has got a Skillshare class. And it's great. You can go on there, you can learn from her. It costs I don't know what it is at the moment, but $10 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If it doesn't pay for itself for you, then it's just absurd.
I know. I probably buy that's 3 coffees, isn't it? 2 coffees, 3 coffees. And I'm that's all you have to sacrifice just to do, get unlimited access to, Aaron Draplin's courses and, Jessica Hitch's courses. And it's the good thing about that is that you can just jump in and out. You don't have to do a whole thing. And I've learned so much more through the insights and processes of other people like that. I feel I've got more than I did when I was at college. Because at college, I got 2 guys. They were called Derek and Len or something, and they were about in their 60s, and they're quite old school. And I was all I was getting was the information from those old guys rather than what, a rounded thing from getting stuff from Lisa and getting stuff from other people. And you might stumble across, the thing is, Sam said she wasn't very good at drawing, but drawing is such a massive area of expertise that it encompasses so many different styles that there may be something within that you can actually do, which might be stuff drawing shapes in Photoshop and just adding a texture. That's a style of drawing. Or it might be using certain tools or something like that. It doesn't have to be drawing a person perfectly like I used to do in my life drawing classes. I was never any good at drawing people, And so it's where, I'm good at drawing letters, but I'm not good at drawing something else. So some people might find that they're really good at drawing a certain particular illustrated type. It might be just patterns. You might be, but you won't find that out unless you just trial out some courses, cheap courses like that, or just pick up a book as well and just try it. I've picked up books. I tried to learn. So I'll stop talking a minute. I tried to learn.
That's good stuff.
Another coding language. I can't remember which one it was.
PHP?
Python?
Yes, that was it. PHP.
Right.
And it was just literally like learning a foreign language. I couldn't do it. And I thought, okay, this is where my skills finish and I have to bring on someone else. I can't be good at all aspects of web design when I was in there.
Right.
And
people dedicate their whole lives to something, like even CSS. Becoming good at it. And they find joy in everything they do that. And I quite liked it when I was doing it, because there was like, it was just tweaking little bits in here and there. But knowing where your strengths and your weaknesses are, even when you go in, you try and learn a course, there's stuff I've tried to learn and it just hasn't gone in, and I can see it's just not working. And I've said, okay, I'm happy that I'm going to leave that to the side. And I've tried something else and I'm good at it. And I think you have to be free to like have the freedom to sort of want to learn and to try it, and then the freedom to let go and put it to the side and try something else.
Yeah.
But don't just say I'm not good at not good at this and then just stop there. It's all about trying it out, having a play with it, see if it works for you, and just delving in and just taking a little taste of it, because that's where you find that. Like, I just tasted ClickFeed because I thought, well, there was no like I needed to do it, or it was just I just randomly picked it. I wanted to learn a craft. I wanted to get off the computer. I didn't want to watch TV. So what could I do? Okay, ClickFeed. I like letter based. I do some letters on the computer with a font sort of slightly links in. But, it turned into something completely beyond what I would, my imagination of what it would turn into. So anyway, I'll stop talking now.
No, I just want to pick up on one point that you mentioned, how, illustration can be this and design can be that. It doesn't have to be, what everybody is just going to what Sam was saying. Just because, she's been crafting her whole life, and now is picking up, she's basically moving towards a computer now and using products to create her designs. She thinks that she's not a designer, and that's not true at all, because design is exactly that. It's creating and applying yourself to a particular craft. And just because it's not exactly like, just because you're not creating an Aaron Draplin logo or a brochure for a client or whatever, it doesn't mean you're not a designer. And just because you're not drawing anatomy perfectly, it doesn't mean you're not an illustrator. So I think people get too hung up on, what society, I guess, has told them what things are, and they're not. That's the beauty of choosing your path. It's like you can shape it. You can shape the kind of designer you want to be. You can shape the kind of illustrator or letterer or whatever, entrepreneur. You have the choice to decide how you want to.
And she can leverage some of this other stuff she has. She says, I've been into crafting and creating for years. And then she says, I suck at drawing, but I love creating. So I use design cut products to do it, which is in many ways, if you're just using the design cut products and not so much illustrating or anything, it's in very many ways like crafting. You're getting things and putting them together and assembling.
Exactly.
So she has all sorts of leverage there. There's massive amounts of talents. And who's to say that her type of design is not what makes her authentic or unique, is that she is incorporating that crafting history she has.
Exactly.
Can I ask a question?
There's a whole industry of digital scrapbookers, for example.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Maybe that's something she doesn't even know about, or he, again, sorry, Sam. Maybe that's something Sam doesn't even know about. But
there's no photo for Sam?
No, I'm looking.
I guarantee whatever way we go, it's going to end up being wrong. So she's in
advance.
Sorry,
Sam.
But you know what I mean? Like, Sam might not even know about the whole digital scrapbooking community. And that is huge. And that's like the perfect marrying of digital and crafting. And you can get like super deep in there. There's a lot of people making a lot of money there. there's a lot of people it's a super close-knit community, like even more so than the overall design community, I would say. And people are like geeking out and helping each other, and it's like quite a friendly sub community. There's all kinds of avenues like that. Or for example, we sold the papercraft pack from Jeremy at Artifacts Forge, which is possibly my favorite pack ever, because his whole house was filled with bits of paper. He was like cutting out
Can you
paper
imagine?
shapes for months and turning it all digital. And that was so much fun, but that's very much a crafty thing, which then is brought into the digital realm if that's what you start to learn. So there's always an angle. And I would say whatever is behind you is not to be dismissed out of hand and now you're onto a blank slate. You're always going to be amazed with how your formative past experiences flow into what you're doing in the future in unexpected ways.
Can I ask a question? Have you got any of those friends who've got like the randomest job? You thought, well, I didn't even know that job existed. Because
you've got the coolest, most random job out of any of my friends.
I think we've all got jobs. How does that even exist?
I'm just thinking about like, say for instance, you've got like, you've got an aeroplane, and you just think of the pilot, and you think of the air stewardesses or stewards, and you think, okay, and then your mind just limits it to that, doesn't it? Well, I'm no good at serving food to people at 10, a mile up in the air, or flying a plane, so you dismiss every other job.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, you've got a person who brings the food on the plane, takes the suitcases off the plane. You've got
designs the plane seats.
You've got the engineers who build the plane, and people put them together. Someone who cleans the plane on the outside. Someone who drives. Pulls the plane along. Someone who fills up the pushes the walkway so it gets on there. And also there's a guy who like Formula One who gives a drink to the driver. When they pull into the pit, and that may be their main job, but they get to travel the world. And you just think, if you limit yourselves just to like, I'm not a Formula One driver or the person who mends the engine, you think of all the things that revolve around that no one else is thinking about, but you could get a job as. So it's the same with design. You just think of like maybe freelancer or someone working in an agency, but there must be millions of other little jobs. That.
Would you guys all agree too that I have noticed, like recently this week, I've had a couple examples of this. Would you guys agree in your cases, it wasn't like you were picked for this, you chose yourself and started doing it, and as a result, you have a bizarre job that is awesome, that does very well for you, right? Like no one said, Tom, you should really do this, and then like kept encouraging you, giving you back rubs as you tried to get it going,
Yeah, your career's advisor. I completely agree, and I need to say it before I forget, but just super quick, Ian, when you're talking about random jobs, one popped to my head, and this is one of my favorites. One of my old best friends lived down quite a nice affluent road, and his neighbor had this huge house, and I remember we were driving past and I said, what the hell does your neighbor do? And he said he invented the buckle seatbelt on that, and patented it for airplanes. And I was like, that'll do it. That's his setup for life.
Okay.
But yeah, Dustin, I completely agree, and I think I agree with you, Ian, as well. There's so many avenues in the creative space, endless avenues, and and you're never fixed or tied to one. Currently, I'm loving my company, but I'm still exploring stuff. Like I know in the future, I aspire to write a book about a lot of the stuff we talk about, and try and do some kind of public speaking in a career-based way, if only to get over my lifelong fear of public speaking. But that's two things which are now a goal, and so I'm starting to shift my life towards those by like putting out stuff on my personal profile and build that up on the side. And that's fine. And you can do exactly the same thing. So maybe it's like, Sam, if you're into crafting, you try a little avenue into design that's doing that, and you can work on something else along the side of that. And then maybe your interests change or your goals change. Like you're not jumping into this being like, okay, I'm fixed now in a graphic designer role with this aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to shift a little bit because I feel like this is something we haven't covered that's important about this is I feel like all of us find inspiration or maybe get permission by seeing someone else do something. We go, I do at least. I'll say, oh, well, someone else did it, so I guess it's okay for me. Like I'm older and I'm this or I'm that, so I guess since they did it, maybe I guess it's okay for me to do it. So what would you guys say about the idea that you rarely see new established designers that are successful that are older? Is that true or is that not true, or what do you guys think of that statement?
I think Ian's living proof, certainly with his lettering, that you can be really quite an aged man and get into it.
Even becoming arthritic, if you will. Is that the word?
Yeah, indeed, that kind of jerky motion probably helps with some of the lettering. But no, I mean, like Naomi's question was, how old is she? 30?
Yeah,
she's 30, and she's
So
been out of
young.
this for 7 years. Ian opened this episode saying, well, he was 34.
Yeah. And I was 40.
Yeah, and
So-
sorry, Lisa, you were 40. Right?
Was part of the question, was it that she wanted to get a job in the industry, as in not freelance but actually employed?
Yes. She said, so how do you start over when you don't have the benefit of being fresh out of college with all those new skills to get an entry role position?
So shall we, for the rest of this episode, because I feel like we've given Sam far too much attention and gender-based ambiguity. So shifting back to Naomi then, what can she do? I think definitely the conversation that we had about learning and accelerated focus learning is very applicable. But I would say, let's think of the recent episode with Ali, right? She's from the perspective of a graduate designer, where her peers are kind of racked with the fear and unknown of, oh no, now we have to get into the real world and figure all this out. And I feel like the rest of my life is hanging on this, and there's this immense pressure. The benefit of Naomi being 30 is presumably she's in full-time employment. So this shift is going to be something she can build up for fun without any financial pressures. Presumably it's not that she's just been fired and she's like, well, my only hope now is to jump into the design industry with no real recent experience. Presumably this is an aspiration that's come to the surface alongside her full-time gig. So it should be, if anything, much lower pressure than the graduate designers that she's envious of.
I think it also sounds like she's worried that she's not like fresh blood, if that makes sense. Because she talks about, you know, that the youngsters seem to have an angle over her because they're fresh out of college. And to be quite honest, I actually think she's got an advantage over them, because she comes with work experience, and yes, it may not be design experience, but I would much rather employ somebody who's already been working in a job, as a entry level designer, than somebody fresh out of college. To be honest, I really would. Because
and you can charge more.
Yeah,
generally.
I mean, exactly.
Like generally, if tomorrow we go and hire a 40-year-old compared to hiring an 18-year-old, I know it shouldn't perhaps work this way, but generally speaking, there are different salary expectations.
Of course.
Because salaries typically increase gradually and steadily as you get older.
Yeah.
So the average salary for an 18-year-old is different from a 40-year-old.
Yeah, because I mean, you come with experience, whether, as I said, whether it's in that job or not. You come with the understanding of what it's like to work in an office environment, what it's like to have a boss and report to the boss, what it's like to be accountable, what it's like to have, deadlines, and so you come with that advantage. So I think you have one up, if not several up, on the fresh people out of college.
And unless you've got it tattooed on your forehead, I have 6 months experience, which presumably you're not going to do, then I think as much as some designers shout about, I have 15 years experience or whatever, generally it's always about the quality of your work. Yeah. And if you accelerate that quality quicker through the other stuff we talked about, then you don't need to shout about your experience. Just don't mention it. people will hire you based on your work. They're not like searching your website being like, hold on, it doesn't say anywhere exactly how many years experience Naomi has. Like, no one cares. And so if you walk in a room with good work and your age, I think we're right. Basically, I'd probably be more likely to hire you than like, oh, here's a kid fresh out of college, desperate for work. You come with a certain gravitas and perhaps less desperation and a feeling of being established, even when you're not. You're kind of faking it.
Yeah, but of course that is assuming that she is at least up to speed with the latest technology to a point. I mean, you can't. She mentioned 7 years. Things have changed in 7 years, so I'm sure she knows the latest stuff, and clients are going to want to know that. They're going to expect that. So I just had to mention that. I wasn't sure.
The thing is, she's still young enough that she could say, okay, if she's maybe struggling to get some work in it, do what you're doing, like do what your day job is, and then just spend a year getting up to speed, building a portfolio, creating stuff every day, so that by the end of that year, you've already got people who may be interested in your work. You've already got a personal brand that you can show. You can. The thing is, when I get work, 90% of the time it's based on something I created for Instagram, not anything based on. I hardly ever get people like companies saying, I want maybe this logo or I want this piece of lettering based on another job. They want it based on me, coming up with a quote or some words I've done for Instagram. So it's all been based, its majority has been based around stuff that I've done as a personal project rather than an actual project that's happened. So, which is great news for people who haven't got any previous experience. It's about creating, showing your process, building up trust with you and like followers and other companies and stuff like that. So they can look through, see that maybe you're getting better or how your style's getting there. It's just so many benefits. And if you give yourself a year, like I was saying in a different episode where, you give yourself freedom to spend a day just mucking around and just playing in programs, learning, stuff like that, and not worrying there's nothing at the end of the day to show for it. Give yourself that year of just playing around, getting work out there, getting to learn, Illustrator, Photoshop, InDesign inside out, and just creating stuff and creating your own brand and not worrying about it for that year. Something might happen within that year, but just knowing that you've got a big chunk of space to develop yourself, because you can have a year of experience of playing around and stuff like that, and you could say that to them. If you went for an interview, you say, I gave myself a year. I have, I was designer a little while ago, but I thought I'd give myself a year. I don't want to go out there and do stuff until I nailed every program that I would need. I got myself up to scratch on, design trends, design tools, everything that they could do. And they say that is commitment. You've spent a year doing that, that would shine much better than just, I've been at university for 2 years or whatever that may be.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a good point, actually.
But, it's not easy for everyone to do that. When you say, I'll go away and come back in a year's time, they're like, I want to do it now,
Yeah.
And it's why the benefits of doing like the 100-day challenge are so worthwhile, and how 90% of people won't do it, and so if you can be that one who pushes through when it gets really hard, and it will be really hard, will benefit coming out the other side. So
yeah, it's funny you say that. Just I don't know if side note on exactly that topic. I don't know if you guys know Bonnie Christine. She's like quite a well-known surface pattern designer, and she basically she trains people to become pattern designers. And she's often asked, like, aren't you scared that people are going to basically take over your career, and you're basically giving all your secrets away, and you're teaching people to become your competitors? And she said that, of course, you have that little of fear. But her main thing is that she's going to give them the recipe, and that extra bit of secret sauce that's going to get them, over the finish line is their commitment, and how determined are they. And it's exactly that, what you're saying, Ian. I mean, we all kind of get given the same amount of time in the day, the same, we have access to the same things generally. I'm generalizing, of course. But at the end of the day, what sets everyone apart, the guy that succeeds or the one that doesn't, is his determination and the fact that he actually just started. And if you just start today, like that 100-day challenge, or if you want to become a better illustrator or letterer or whatever, if you just start today, just doing 10 minutes, you're already one step closer to getting better.
And I know it's easier said than done, but I don't want it to become an excuse for them. So this is kind of the tough love part. Like, if Naomi, you're listening and you hear this, and today or tomorrow you don't start on this journey, then your lack of success is down to that. It's nothing to do with your age.
Yeah.
And I would say the same thing if you were 75 years old. Like, the fact you're 30 is literally nothing. Like, it almost shouldn't be a debate. And
exactly.
Clearly it is. And I'm not trying to be harsh there, but you know what I mean? 30 is nothing.
Yeah.
Like, that's, your age is irrelevant. It's now just a case of kind of getting on with it, I think. And I could, unfortunately it shouldn't be, but I could see it being an issue if you were 75. Mm-hmm. I think people might be sort of weirdly reluctant to work with someone that old in some cases, which again is not right at all. But you're not 75, you're 30.
For like greats, like they're in huge demand that are older. I mean, like Saul Bass, all sorts of people were in demand, very old. They were like classics, I guess. They were legends. But the funny thing, have you guys noticed when I was in my early 20s, I would constantly tell myself, well, I'm not old enough. And then I'd get to 27 and I'd be like, well, I'm
too old.
I'm not 19 or 20. Yeah. And then now I'm 37. I think, well, I don't even think about it anymore. I think when you start to hit your later 30s or 40s, you start to say, I don't really care either way what anyone thinks about what I'm doing. But
true.
For Naomi or anyone that's having like an issue where they're insecure about that, I would try a little thought experiment that was told to me. And that is, imagine if your friend came to you who was, in Naomi's case, 30 years old and said, I'm thinking about changing careers and going back to design after 7 years. What would you tell to them? And what would you think about them doing that? And my guess would be that you would probably not think it was strange. You wouldn't think it was unreasonable that they could be successful at that. And I think by thinking of a good friend in a similar situation helps you to get out of your own mind and picture how not crazy or unlikely or unreasonable it is to expect that you could succeed at that.
Yes. Love it. I'm just picking the shrapnel out of my face from that knowledge bomb just going off there, buddy. That's wise words.
That is
cool.
Good.
So any final thoughts for Naomi, Sam, and the listeners at home? I sorry, just super quick, Ian. I've got one which is not actually for them at all. This is purely for me. If you're listening to this and you're old, like really old, can you please let us know? Because I really want to know who our oldest listener is. And if you think you could be that person.
What, specifically a designer and old?
Yeah, like someone listening
Who's
to the show.
Or old. Just old.
Well, I presume if they're listening to the show, they're probably a creative. Or
I think you have to be specific, because you could I go, Mum, they're looking for an old person. I
want to tell
Hopefully
her.
Ian's mother does not listen to the show.
No.
Okay, yeah, I guess. So if you are listening to the show and you're a creative, and you feel you are more of the elderly persuasion, please reach out. I'd absolutely love that if we get like a 91-year-old being like, yeah, I tune in every week. Like, that'd be so cool.
And I'd love to hear if you're making stuff. That'd be cool. I'd love to know about that.
I'm actually a total moron, because you've just reminded me of my mom. She's a perfect example, actually.
Yeah.
How did I not think of that?
Why she
literally, I mean, she's been retired for a couple of years, and she literally picked up a paintbrush for the first time in her life, and I'm not kidding, about maybe 2 years ago, I'd say. She now has her own online shop on Etsy and her own website where she sells graphic goods, like I do, but with watercolor and stuff. And she's loving it. And the whole thing was just to keep herself busy and do something creative. And I mean, it's never too late. And I'm so proud of her because she's not of the computer era, and she has literally taught herself InDesign, Illustrator,
That's so cool.
Photoshop. I mean, it's insane.
And she's good as well. She's like gunning for you, Lisa. I've seen her work.
Yeah. I
Shows
can't
it's in the
believe how
blood.
much she's improved. I mean, it's another testament to that whole like practice every day.
Yeah, I that made me think, actually, I forgot to mention, we have tons of community members at Design Cuts who are actually retired. And so they're doing this as like their creative outlet. Now they don't work anymore.
Yeah, I have customers
And
like
they
that
get
too.
really good.
A lot.
And they get really good, and some just do it for a hobby, but some are like, oh, actually, I'm starting to make money from it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
my mum goes overseas on
happens to-
her earnings. She just
Well, how,
so
how
cool.
come?
it's insane.
And they're
It's
not
insane.
30.
Can I
Like-
can I can I ask a question?
Yes.
Hypothetical. What if she came out with a portrait creator?
I might have to murder her in the night. No, no, she wouldn't. She wouldn't.
You should collaborate.
He didn't
on
say if
something.
she would. He said, "What if?"
Yeah.
Then what?
No, she's got a particular style, and that's she's not of that ilk, if that makes sense.
What if she just downloaded yours and then posted it under her name?
Yeah, I mean, technically she created you, Lisa, so she's kind of got that going for her.
Really,
She could-
people?
Yeah, she did like create you, like literally.
She could just
That's
cross out
true.
Lisa and put her own name next to the glands.
Yeah, the one true glands. That should be her shop name.
The original.
Yes, yeah, the original G
You
Meister.
wonder where she gets her talents from.
OG.
Yeah, I taught her everything she knows.
Yeah, it's so funny.
I really want a family feud now. This is great. We're just going to be the puppet masters of this
My
family
mother's
feud.
too sweet. She would just giggle her way through everything.
I tell you what, one advantage I find about being older and doing stuff is that I've let go of all like the 20s to 30s. You come out of school and you had loads of friends in school, and then you came out and then you sort of like all got thinned down because like you didn't see them, and you realize who your friends are, but then you're still in that sort of like, do they actually like me, or do I, am I annoying?
Yeah.
And it's not until you get to your 30s that you're actually then comfortable. You have a sort of a set of friends that you mostly hang out with and stuff like that. And so you have less of your personal side to worry about, and you can be a bit more focused. And
True.
and that helps just clear up a lot of things, I find.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
Well said.
getting older, I find that actually we talked about happiness in another episode, and I was just thinking, I find I get happier the older I am, because I don't know. Yeah,
That's just
I
dementia.
feel I
saying.
look less geeky as well.
No, sorry, Ian. It is true. It's completely true.
It's great advice.
And I
It's
hear
absolutely-
I hear that from so many people, and hopefully it continues. But I particularly hear it of people in their 30s and 40s.
Best
Everyone
years
seem-
ever.
Yeah, everyone seems to say that.
It is.
Yes, that bodes well. I've just entered that decade. So,
Yeah.
but no, you're spot on. See, I feel bad now. You're making a really nice, sincere point.
It's fine. I'm used to it.
Cool. Well, yeah. Final words of wisdom, Ian. I want you to wrap the show
I think I've run
because
out of all my wisdom.
you stole the opening, so you deserve to wrap up the show.
I think
Why do I feel like he's getting punished?
I don't.
I'm
Sorry, go
trying to
ahead,
do a
Ian.
nice thing.
I've literally
joking.
run out of anything in my head. It's just
Well, on that note,
on yeah.
we'll see everyone next time. But yeah, thanks so much for tuning in, guys.
Yeah.
Bye from all of us, and especially bye from Ian.
Bye. See you later.
Leave it on a cliffhanger. I'll probably come up with
Yeah.
as soon as we stop recording. I'll be like, "Oh, well, I could have said this."
Oh yeah, you should be like, oh wait, I have the key to success and
Oh, yeah, right.
hard cut
Yeah. Find out next week.
Yeah.
if we have time.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. We hope that you agree with us that age should never be a blocker for your creativity or success. If you have any friends in this position, we hope you'll share this episode with them to help them on their own creative journey. As always, you can find full show notes for today's episode over at honestdesigners.com or find us over on iTunes by searching for The Honest Designers Show. And do remember, we're now on social media too if you search for Honest Designers. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the absolute world to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for your fellow designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.